Minutes before dawn, Massachusetts appeared calm on the surface. But inside a state administrative building in Springfield, a sealed courier box sitting on a conference table threatened to turn public trust into a crime scene. What investigators discovered there was not a rumor, nor a street stash, but evidence hidden where order was supposed to reign. And once that evidence was revealed, the consequences wouldn't be confined to a single room or a single name. Welcome to Border Watch Daily, where we delve into complex investigations and challenges that test public trust. Stay with me to uncover how a simple box revealed corruption so profound it threatened to dismantle the very foundations of public order. Because this wasn't an ordinary drug bust. The trail led through official doors, routine systems, and familiar neighborhoods, and events unfolded faster than anyone could have imagined. At 5:12 a.m., the streets of Springfield, Massachusetts were still silent. The hallways were too, with a silence so profound that every step echoed louder than it should have. The Springfield State Administrative Building had been infiltrated. DEA agents, backed by FBI tactical units, advanced down the corridor in tight formation. No shouts, no running, just a steady, controlled movement. Their radios were discreet, their hands poised, their faces determined. They weren't there to ask questions. They were there to confirm what they already feared. A steel door gave way with a sharp, powerful clang that rolled down the hallway like thunder. That sound didn't belong in this place. Inside of the office, the scene appeared ordinary at first glance. Files stacked on desks, framed photos on shelves, a flag in a corner. It was the kind of room designed for meetings, not for harboring evidence. But in the center of the room, something stood out. A sealed courier box sitting on the conference table as if placed there to be ignored. An agent broke the seal. Another lifted the lid. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, the contents appeared, and the atmosphere grew tense. Inside were 8 kilograms of pure cocaine, tightly and flawlessly packaged. Beside it, a 9mm pistol, and beneath a file, an envelope containing $38,500 in cash, counted and banded. The kind of money that has no business in an office serving the public. Handcuffed behind the desk stood Lamar Cook, Deputy Director of the Governor's Office for Western Massachusetts. He didn't look like a man accustomed to clandestine exchanges in a dark alley. He looked more like someone used to cameras, the language of public service, to being introduced in circles where hands were shaken and the prestige of his office was trusted. And that was precisely the problem. This wasn't a mere courier. This was a high-ranking official, caught red-handed with enough cocaine to supply several cities. In the first minutes after the arrest, the building didn't descend into chaos. It froze. Agents photographed every angle. They tagged the pistol. They logged the money. They measured the packages, then resealed them. Outside the office, the hallway remained silent, but the meaning of that silence had changed. It was no longer calm. It was restraint, because now every locked door in the building seemed capable of concealing something. The question was no longer just what was in the box, but how it got there, how often this had happened before, and who else had learned to hide behind the routine workings of government. As Cook was led away, one detail remained behind, like a fuse ready to ignite. On his desk, a laptop, closed, ordinary, and silent. But the agents who noticed it didn't treat it as a mere accessory. They viewed it as a gateway, because what it contained would either explain everything or force their next move. After Lamar Cook was removed from the building, the DEA's digital forensics team seized the laptop from his desk and sealed it as a second crime scene. It contained encryption not typically found in a government office. Multi-layered, deliberate encryption, designed to slow anyone who wasn't already part of the system. The FBI's cyber unit, set up in a secure room, created a disk image, preserved its contents, then bypassed the locks, one cautious step at a time. For while the laptop was designed to resist, it was also designed to conceal time. When the screen was finally unlocked, the case took a new turn. What seemed like a simple courier box transformed into shipping logs, schedules, and notes written in coded fragments. Dates followed closely, locations repeated. The timeline stretched over more than 14 months. And the entries didn't seem panicked. They seemed organized. 19 shipments were in the log. Each was listed between 8 and 20 kilograms, transiting through the regular state postal system with drop-off points in warehouses and on docks. The language was ordinary. Nothing in the log hinted at a cartel's footprint. It looked like logistics, and that was the camouflage, because routine is the best hiding place. Other entries referred to product lines designed to kill silently. Methamphetamine tablets pressed to look like common prescription drugs, fake pills, fentanyl sticks. Crystal shipments reported as coming from northern Mexico. One line mentioned 227 kilograms seized in a federal operation linked to the Sinaloa cartel. But the document didn't read like news. It read like a supply chain in full adaptation, as if the network had already learned to continue operating despite pressure. As agents followed the names associated with the shipments, what emerged wasn't a list of street dealers. It was a list of positions: patrol officer, officer, deputy sheriff, court clerk. A chain designed to move cocaine through Massachusetts neighborhoods, schools, and homes. While the public saw uniforms and assumed safety, the routing details then became clear. Packages were moved via the state assembly mail service. Evidence transited through state-owned municipal storage facilities. Drop-off logs matched government office hours when doors were open and faces were familiar. The operation resulted in dozens of arrests, including police officers, deputy sheriffs, and 2 sheriffs. But the file revealed one essential thing. These arrests were not the tip of the iceberg. They were pressure points, and pressure points exist because something heavier lies above them. One name kept appearing in cross-reference notes, not as a person, but as a source: Laiva Sanre, described as a paramilitary drug syndicate operating from New York to Maine. Whether that label was a brand or a backbone structure, the pipeline hadn't begun in Massachusetts and wouldn't end there. Once the digital trail was mapped, the next step was to prove the transfer points in the real world. A controlled delivery was arranged at a port reception point used by legitimate freight during the day. The box was tagged. The seal was photographed. Under dim light, the tape revealed a second pressure line. Someone had touched it before. Someone inside the process. Someone who knew exactly where to leave their fingerprints so no one would ever look for them. Just before the pickup window, a forklift crossed the loading lane, cutting off the line of sight for an instant. When visibility cleared, the box had changed hands. No shouts, no running, just a clean exchange, like a routine task, as if it had happened 100 times. A burner phone vibrated near the dock doors. A short message lit up the screen. Dock 4, door 2. A man in a reflective vest emerged from the crowd with the calm of someone expecting no resistance. The team let him take one step, just enough to confirm the tag. Then an agent closed the distance and placed a hand on his shoulder. Step away. The man's eyes darted to the concrete drain, and his hand slammed down. The phone hit the water and slid toward the grate. The phone. The phone. An agent knelt, gloved fingers in the dirty water, and snatched it before it vanished. The contact's name was an initials code that matched Cook's log, meaning the doc wasn't a guess. It was a route. The man in the vest began to speak, but the words came out with difficulty. He wasn't the leader. He was a link, a warehouse badge instead of a police badge, but the cover was the same. A uniform people trusted, used to funnel poison into normal life while everyone else looked away. Back at the federal command post, the dock interception became a new red marker on the map. The laptop's timeline stopped looking like history and became a calendar. The question was no longer who, but how far and how fast the system would try to protect itself once it realized the door had been breached. Stay with me, because the next step won't be paperwork. It will be action, and time will be of the essence. At 3:50 a.m., inside a federal command post just outside Worcester, a digital map of Massachusetts glowed in a dark room. Red markers remained fixed on the screen, each linked to the same network the laptop had revealed. Storage units, safe houses, parking lots, and distribution apartments nestled in neighborhoods that looked normal from the street. The FBI, DEA, and state tactical team stood ready, awaiting the final signal, because as soon as the network sensed danger, evidence would start to disappear. At 4:30 a.m., a single message appeared on a secure screen. Action, all units. The command post didn't explode. It tensed. 14 targets, 14 minutes. No warning, no escape. Because the dock interception had proven the network could react fast enough to erase itself if given time. For this operation to succeed, it had to be simultaneous. It had to be clean. It had to hit every door before the first phone call could be made. In Lowell, armored vehicles pulled up to a 2-story auto repair shop that still looked like a place where brakes were fixed and tires rotated. Agents stacked up at the door. A body camera captured the moment a breaching tool struck steel. A white flash from a breaching charge. Then the door swung inward. Inside, 3 men reached for weapons. Flashbang grenades clapped and echoed off the concrete. Orders came, short and sharp. Hands up, boots slammed on an oil-stained floor, and the room filled with a pungent chemical haze. Behind the workstations, an agent knocked on a wall and heard it sound hollow. A panel slid, revealing packaging, tape, gloves, and a scale. The practical tools that turned shipments into street products without ever needing a cartel warehouse, because the warehouse had been replaced by an ordinary business. At the same moment, in Springfield, a warehouse disguised as an agricultural distributor concealed something entirely different. Tarps covered piles that resembled feed and seasonal supplies. When agents pulled back the tarps, dust rose into the beam of their lights. Beneath them were brick-shaped packages, wrapped, sealed, and ready for shipment. 91 kilograms of cocaine, 41 kilograms of fentanyl. These numbers weren't symbolic. It was inventory stacked as if it had always been there. In Worcester, a surveillance camera inside a garage detected movement. Within seconds, suspects grabbed rifles and attempted to flee through the backyard. Overhead, a Black Hawk helicopter passed low enough for the downdraft of its rotors to shake dust from the roof. A voice boomed from a loudspeaker. "Drop your weapons! You are surrounded!" They fired anyway. A DEA agent took cover behind a corner and held position. 2 FBI agents advanced with measured, disciplined, and deliberate steps. Short bursts, Controlled breathing, no panic. The strobing muzzle flashes against the brick turned the alley into a glittering tunnel. Concrete shards sprayed onto the pavement. A car alarm blared and wouldn't stop. The sound mingled with the gunfire until it became a long, muffled roar that made time feel slower than it was. The next 9 minutes felt like an eternity. In the first minute, bullets snapped and everyone ducked for cover. Then came a brief pause. 2 seconds of silence so sharp it felt louder than the gunfire. During that pause, one suspect ran and found the exit sealed. By the 6th minute, the firing thinned. One suspect lay motionless. 2 surrendered, hands trembling, realizing every path they thought safe had vanished. When the last rifle stopped firing, the work shifted to control and evidence collection. At another location, a suspect attempted to destroy a ledger, dragging a bag toward a sink and reaching for a lighter. An agent sprinted, pinned the bag, and tore out the pages. Damp but legible, encrypted initials, payment logs, proof the network kept its own accounts, and proof someone believed those books would never be seen. By sunrise, the scale of the operation was undeniable. 47 arrests, 2 metric tons of drugs seized across multiple sites, 129 weapons, including illegally modified rifles and foreign imports. Dozens of encrypted phones and ledgers were gathered in evidence bins. News helicopters circled overhead. Residents watched from their windows, trying to comprehend how such an empire could coexist with schools, businesses, and homes undetected. Across the state, one truth became clear. This was a system that had learned to live as if it were an integral part of the landscape. But the raid did more. It revealed traces that were about to unveil the full map, and that map would point to a problem raids alone couldn't solve. When the last door closed and the last evidence bin was logged, the real work began. The raids were only the first step. The architecture behind them was still hidden, woven through businesses and institutions that seemed ordinary from the outside, and that's what made it so dangerous. Inside the Federal Analysis Center in Boston, walls were lined with screens displaying body camera timestamps, dock angles, phone extractions, and cloned hard drives. Analysts and financial crime specialists worked alongside cyber teams, pulling one thread at a time, translating encrypted initials into roots and roots into names. The room didn't look like a victory lap. It looked like a triage center, because every hour that passed meant someone, somewhere, had time to cover their tracks. A map began to take shape. Not a map of streets, but a map of power. 4 main distribution corridors ran through Massachusetts, concealed within legitimate logistics companies. Their trucks carried agricultural products, equipment, construction, supplies, anything that could make sealed containers appear routine. Cook wasn't the source. He was an endpoint, a reception node in a pipeline stretching from the Mexican border through Ohio to New York and finally into the Boston shuttle zone. The storage network was built similarly. What looked like community food warehouses were actually cold storage fronts. Behind stacks of frozen vegetables were brick-sized packages marked with coded symbols, the same symbols recovered during the investigation, indicating purity level and destination. These symbols were inventory controls, and once analysts matched them across different locations, they stopped being clues and became coordinates. Then came the money. 2 private casinos surfaced in the records. Invitation only. No neon lights, no crowds, just discreet back rooms where chips became cash and cash became electronic deposits. Before dawn the next night, federal teams moved into one with warrants and a plan designed for silence. A manager tried to stall at the door, smiling too much, talking too long. An agent brushed past him and pointed to the ceiling surveillance cameras. Those first. Another team bagged routers, seized the DVR, and cut power to the server rack before anyone could wipe the recordings, because the casino wasn't entertainment. It was a valve. Deposits didn't stay local. They flowed to shell corporations registered in Delaware and Puerto Rico. Numbers replacing names, invoices replacing questions. The scheme looked clean until analysts juxtaposed it with the payment logs from seized ledgers. Then everything clicked into place, like a shadow aligning with the body that cast it. The most alarming layer wore a friendly face. A non-profit organization claiming to support community youth had processed over $11.3 million in donations. The donor names were fake. The money originated from drug sales, and the same non-profit paid speaking fees, campaign support contributions, and security consulting fees to several local officials. The network had designed itself to appear useful to the community, useful to the state, useful to everyone except the families burying their dead from overdose. And that's why it had survived. It didn't need to threaten everyone. It only needed to be trusted. By the time the last pins were placed on the board, the scale was undeniable. $220 million in annual profits. Thousands of homes affected. Institutions compromised from within. Yet, something else emerged. Weak points where the operation depended on a small number of individuals still active. Individuals who didn't move shipments themselves, but ensured they never encountered obstacles. That's when the plan changed. The next phase wouldn't be surveillance. It would be purification. Because the network's greatest weapon wasn't the drugs it trafficked, it was the people it had drawn in with it. And those people would be at their posts in a few hours, unless they were arrested first. At dawn, unmarked federal vans converged on police stations, municipal buildings, and administrative offices across Massachusetts. These weren't the fast-paced entries of previous raids. They were precise, surgical, inevitable, designed to remove compromised insiders before the network could warn them, and to do so while the day still seemed normal from the outside. Inside a district station in Worcester, officers had gathered for morning briefings until federal agents walked through the front doors with warrants. A lieutenant who had served 23 years watched his badge and service weapon taken from him. A detective, once lauded for reducing drug crime in his neighborhood, lowered his head as the handcuffs clicked shut. No struggle, no argument, just the acceptance that the game had turned against him. Down the hall, a procurement official froze as agents opened a filing cabinet and pulled out envelopes of funds earmarked for staged community outreach programs. Names, dates, and amounts matched payment logs recovered from seized phones and encrypted ledgers. By noon, 17 police officers, 2 municipal administrators, and 1 state procurement advisor were in custody. There were no shouts, no excuses, just silence. The kind of silence that tells you people knew this day was possible and yet hoped it would never come. Outside, an elderly man held a folded American flag, the same flag he had once presented to the police station after his son's funeral. He watched officers being escorted away, handcuffed. Nearby, small crowds formed. Some were angry, some heartbroken, many incredulous, because these weren't strangers who had poisoned their neighborhoods. These were people they had trusted to protect them. In Boston, the governor addressed the state. If the badge is used to harm the people, then the shield is broken. And when the shield is broken, we fix it. We do not look away. In response, the Integrity Review Task Force was formed, with the authority to audit police departments, government offices, financial transfers, and supply chains linked to public agencies. Because the only way to rebuild trust is to prove where it was broken. When the last evidence bag was sealed, Massachusetts experienced a moment of silent reckoning. Not a victory, not relief, but something heavier and more real. Because it was never just about cocaine, money, or seized weapons. It was about trust. And that trust had been broken from within. Corruption doesn't die in one raid. Cartels don't disappear in one operation. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. That's why vigilance is essential, because every complex investigation reveals the challenges our institutions face and underscores why transparency remains indispensable to justice.